And okay, we are live, I think. Just let me go. Yes, we are live.
Hello, I warmly welcome you to our 28th webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabine Heinz and I'm the host of our webinar series, and on this 24th of October, I'm really delighted that you have come to join us, and I'm happy to announce our today's special guest, Stephen Wolfe, President and co-founder of the Beyond Earth Institute. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Sabine. How are you?
Fine, and I hope you are well too. Stephen will talk about today a global policy framework to enable the creation of communities beyond Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would like to welcome Adriano Altino. He is one of our vice presidents and former president and founder of SRI. Hello, Adriano.
Hello, everybody. Very welcome, everybody, to this webinar. Okay. I'm very eager to listen to the lecture by Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, a very interesting one. So, okay, go ahead.
Stephen, before I leave the stage to you, I would like to introduce you to our audience. Stephen Wolfe is the president and co-founder of the Beyond Earth Institute, a think tank whose mission is to create and sustain a legal and policy framework that enables economically vibrant communities beyond Earth. Steve is also Deputy Executive Director for Global Spaceport Alliance and partner at CWSP International. I hope you will explain what it means. He serves on the board of director of the Global Entrepreneurship Network for Space, and he is on the board of editors for the Journal of Space Philosophy. Steve served in the US House of Representatives as Executive Director of the Congressional Space Caucus and drafted the Space Settlement Act on 1988. The bill was signed into law as part of the NASA authorization bill. And Stephen is the author of the book, The Obligation, A Journey to Discover Human Purpose on Earth and in the Cosmos. Stephen, the stage is yours. You may share your screen if you want.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sabine. And I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Adriano, for this invitation. As a way of introduction, though, I do want to mention that Adriano and I go back quite a number of years because I went through some of my old files, Adriano, and I had started writing about space philosophy, right? And so you had actually asked me to talk a little bit about my book, which contains the essence of my philosophical thinking on, why it is people are so motivated to pursue space or want to travel to space or migrate to space. And I started writing on that in the early aughts, and in 2000, I believe it was 2005, 2006, I received an email from Adriano, and I'm going to share this slide. He invited me to the. Now I'm definitely going to add this, share this with you.
Moncrivello, to the castle of Moncrivello.
Moncrivello, right? This was the first international. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here, but I want to share this. This is my cover slide, Adriano. If everyone could read this, the first International Convention of Technologies of the Future, April 1st, 2006.
I'm sorry. The castle of Moncrivello.
Moncrivello, right? This was the first. We're getting feedback. Is that you, Adriano? Okay. Anyway, I just want to acknowledge that, that was,
I'm sorry,
that was
Steve, I'm sorry. There is a repetition. Maybe you have a web browser open that is repeating our.
Okay. Let me see. Sorry.
Okay, okay, that's fine now. Thank you.
Anyway, I just want to acknowledge that, that was.
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm sorry. There is a repetition. Maybe you have a web browser open that is repeating our.
Okay. Let me see.
It's strange.
Sorry.
Very strange. Okay, okay, that's fine
happened?
now. Thank you.
Anyway, I just want to acknowledge that, that was.
I'm sorry, Steve, I'm sorry. There is a repetition. Maybe you have a web browser open that is repeating our.
Okay. Let me see.
Hello.
Now it is good.
Hello.
Yeah, now it is quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, am I echoing now?
Yes, please.
I'm not echoing. Okay. Wow, that was strange. I'm not quite sure what the conflict was there. I apologize to the listeners.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah. So we'll. I don't know in all that noise whether everyone picked up on this acknowledgement that I was trying to give to Adriano and our history together. But I had started talking about my philosophical ideas back in the early 2000s. And Adriano had actually come across my writings and as a result invited me out to Italy to participate in really, I think what was to become, I think, the Space Renaissance Institute, right? This was your first event. And I was so honored and pleased to be part of that. And I think that
it was not founded, the Space Renaissance yet. The Space Renaissance was founded in 2008, so 2 years later.
Right. So this was sort of the beginning of your thinking on all of this. So anyway, I'm glad to have been there at the very early stages of your development, and glad to join you. And certainly have been very eager to watch the progress of the Institute as we go forward. So let me stop sharing for a minute. So what Adriano had first asked me to talk about my philosophical thinking that is contained in my book, The Obligation. So and I responded by saying I really like to talk about what we're doing at the Beyond Earth Institute and creating a framework that will enable people to migrate to space one day. And he said, fine, as long as you also talk about your philosophy in your book. So this presentation is really going to be in two parts. I'm going to talk about the obligation in my book and really this underpinning of why we go into space. And then I want to talk about the Beyond Earth Institute. So I think one feeds into the other. One is the philosophical reason why we do things, what motivates us, right? And then it's like, and then we have to ask the question, what do we do with that motivation, right? So we're, how do we respond once we understand what motivates us, So it's the philosophy and then the action. So let me then return to my slides if I can. And then I'm gonna share, and then I'm gonna go big here. Let me go big. Okay, so this was one of the this is one of the slides from that original presentation I did in Montecrivello, and it is a nebula in the shape of a DNA twisted pairs, and it really, this is the essence of my thinking in terms of the evolution of the universe. It's this idea that everything that has evolved from the very beginning of the Big Bang was determined to a degree, to an essence, according to some kind of a DNA that applies to the entire universe, right? So we understand DNA in terms of, tiny little twisted pairs of DNA somehow or another tells the universe to make one of us, right? So I think on a universal scale, we have some kind of DNA code that is telling the universe to become what it has become today. And I think that's a reasonable, assertion to make. And it's not theistic. It's just an observation. So my book, The Obligation, when I was in Montecrivello in 2006, I'm sure that I announced that I was writing a book. And so then finally in 2013, I think it was, I finally did release the book, and it's actually been fairly well received. And I've gotten very encouraging response from Adriano, but many folks who have felt that the book has resonated with them. And that's what I think, as a writer, just in general, getting that kind of a feedback is very encouraging. You know that you've written something that has meant something to somebody else, right? As a creator. But when we look at this philosophy, though, it all starts with planet Earth, right? We understand that the Earth is a living system in and of itself, in its totality. We understand that that this planet has evolved over time from just being a rocky surface to one that encompassed water, to one out of which the life emerged, right, and evolved over some 4 million years, right? So that's really where the story kind of starts, and really based upon an idea of a DNA that's sort of permeating through all of existence in the universe, and certainly through the Earth itself. I like to think of the Earth as, say, an oak tree, right? So an oak tree lives for 50 years before it sheds a single seed, right? Earth has lived for 4 million years. It's lived, or life emerged on this planet, let's say 4 million years ago, and has been progressing. And we have largely stayed on this planet. We haven't left this planet. There's been no seeds that have left this planet, like an oak tree. So, but at a certain point in the development of this tree, of the oak tree, seed pods appear, acorns appear, and then thousands of them are then shed from the tree and go everywhere and some of which will then create new life, new oak trees, right? And I think what I'm getting at here, this is sort of a metaphor for kind of where we are. It's hard for us to appreciate that human life is going to spread from this planet. In the same ways, if you had an oak tree in your backyard and you didn't really know what kind of a tree it was, and maybe for years and years and years and years, it never did it didn't give off a single acorn, and all of a sudden it did it all at once. And that's kind of where we are as a human civilization. We're kind of at that point where we're ready to expand into space, but we haven't done it yet. So it's hard for us to really, comprehend this idea that we're going to be sending parts of us, human civilization, out into the solar system. And I think of this as a way that we think of the bee, which is another one of my favorite metaphors. So you have the honeybee, right? That's going from flower to flower. It is interested in getting that nectar so that it can feed itself, and so that it can build its honeycombs, and so that it can live its life the way bees live. It is completely unaware of the fact that it is going about its business, it is helping to fertilize the flowers in its area, right? So it doesn't really know that. So, in a way, humans have been going from flower to flower. And I would look at the flowers as technology, right? Because we're very interested. What's the next top technology? How can we make this technology even better? And that's our new nectar every time, because we get the dopamine rush every time there's a new a new iPhone comes out, this rush of like something new. We want to know, can we apply it? Can we change it? Can we upgrade it? The technology and our desire, our curiosity about making tools and making technology better and better and better are the flowers we go that help to. And we just think that we're interested in technology for technology's sake or for what it can do for us personally. We're not aware collectively that that what we're doing is we are progressing technology over time to the point where it's actually enabling us to create those rockets or seed pods, if you will, that will take us off this planet and allow us to plant seeds of life on other worlds. And I want to, this is where I talk in my book about a set of endowments. These are traits, human attributes that are unique to us, right? And we kind of seen these kinds of things, maybe Myers-Briggs, a kind of thing. But these are traits that have allowed us not only to be very, very successful on this planet in many, many ways, to basically hold dominion over the whole planet, but to also then these are also the exact same traits that we need if we were to expand beyond this planet. How curious is that? So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about these traits. So they're the wanderer, the inventor, settler, the builder, and so forth. So let me just share these with you, and hopefully it can create some kind of an understandable framework. So the wanderer, we know this is the explorer, this in us that wants to sort of see what's on the other side of the hill, explore. We want to explore the surface of Mars. Then there's the settler, though. We want to not only explore, but really what we're doing is we're trying to find another place that we can live and thrive as a community, right? So the idea that we would actually explore outer space without looking for ways to settle outer space doesn't fit with who we are as human beings. We are the explorer, but we're also the settler. And too much of our conversation about space exploration is just about exploration. We need that component of settlement for that. The inventor. This is where I was talking before a little bit about, we're always interested in how can we make what we're doing better, and so not all of us, but there's a segment of us that are very interested in invention. And I think all of us are inventors in one way or another. We're all not Robert Goddard, for example, creating, inventing rocket propulsion, right? But we have that aspect of us. And then we also like taking those what has been invented and then replicating it. Wow, isn't that cool? I want to do that too. I want to use that phone. I want to apply that technology. I want to have that kind of a system that's been developed. I want to utilize that, or how can I utilize that and bring that? How can I turn that into a business model that can bring that idea to the masses? And then there's the visionary. How do we see, these are people who are the writers, the people who, and some politicians, not many, but some politicians who can have a vision for where we want to be into the distant future and want us to try to live into that future. And then there are the protectors. These are also visionaries, but they're also with those folks that recognize that that there are risks out there, and they are looking to mitigate those risks for our survival collectively as a species. So that's really those are endowments. Again, they all represent who we are and where we're going. Why is this? This is it all speaks to, I think, what Frank White had written in his book, and I pulled out. If you haven't read The Overview Effect by Frank White, you certainly should. And he said the purpose of human space exploration cannot be found in human desire and ambition alone, right? So it's not just about our desire and our ambitions and so forth. He's saying, but must be viewed as a phenomenon actively encouraged by universal forces, right? Universal forces, what is that? That's sort of that's the universe. That's the sort of the DNA. That's what I also call the evolutionary impulse that is sort of driving us. And then probably we feel this impulse, and then we put on top of that a desire or an ambition that kind of makes sense in a normal, in regular terms, we'll say. Another aspect of this, and again, it has to do with who we are as human beings and what our tendencies have been. See, all I'm doing is really just trying to see what the patterns are in human existence and seeing how they fit together in helping us understand our interest in projecting ourselves out into space. So there's other, so I'd like to talk about this empire building, right? Or in a simpler term, it's this desire to manage the resources of a given area. It might be local, but it might be global, where you're trying to combine the resources together, such in order for you to do bigger things, right? Certainly through agriculture, so typically throughout history, this kind of managing the resources and getting them together happens through conquests and empire building and so forth. And that's sort of a negative side of this, but this idea to manage those resources is very relevant. And today, of course, we see this playing out where titans of industry are gathering the resources and so forth, and the wealth that is related to that, and then they are applying it to very interesting types of projects. And these kinds of projects seem to appear over and over again in history, throughout the history of human life, and that is this idea of building structures that reach ever higher towards the heavens, right? We're trying to reach the heavens in a way that's that is fulfilling. So this is this desire. There's always been a lot of talk about, oh, isn't it interesting that all these unrelated cultures have a desire for building pyramids, right? Building large structures that reach to the heavens. And I think that's more has to do with this evolutionary impulse to not only just build towers up to the heavens, but actually to reach the heavens themselves. And of course, in ancient times, we didn't have rocket technology, so that was not possible. But you look at these images. So in the Middle Ages, we had the cathedrals, soaring cathedrals. And of course, an obelisk is a very common artifact that we see from culture to culture throughout the world. This idea of a structure, and then of course we see the modern skyscraper is another expression of this desire to reach the heavens. And then of course, eventually what happens? We actually do reach the heavens through our rocketry. It's an interesting concept. I encourage you all to kind of look at this. The way I am envisioning the obligation, the way you would read it in the book, I mean, I do say that moving into outer space is not just something that's interesting to do, but it is an obligation that we have to ourselves and to the world, right? However, I do say that this particular obligation is part of a trilogy, and that is the first element of that trilogy of obligations is the primary obligation that I call, which is the obligations to ourselves, to each of us, right? So we are, we ultimately have to take care of each other. When we've been doing that, certainly in a tribal way, we take care of our tribe. Certainly within a family, we take care of our family. As our consciousness expands, we care about our country, and then many people do care about the welfare of all people on the planet. So this is the primary obligation that we have, and we should be feeling. The second, and then there's what I call a twins. Not one is better than the other, but the twin obligations include stewardship of the planet, of Earth, and then space migration. So here we have there's space migration represents an outward obligation, and then the stewardship of the planet itself is our inward obligation. So I don't want to say that we're leaving the Earth to leave the Earth behind. No, we're leaving the Earth to save the Earth in many ways, and that the impulse to save the Earth, which of course went into retrograde once we actually saw a picture of the whole Earth from space, right, for the first time in 1968, that actually launched the environmental movement into overdrive. This was a we recognize the two are not. Space migration is not any more or less important than saving planet Earth and protecting and basically restoring the Earth. So the idea that we believe, and many people in the space community believe, that once we can leave the Earth, once we can relieve the Earth of many of its of the industry that is damaging the Earth will be allowed to restore itself to some kind of a more idyllic place to live and so forth. So that's the idea of the obligation trilogy. And then how can I wrap this up? I think I actually went too far, much further than I thought I would go in these thoughts, but I offer these ideas as a way for us to maybe I'll look at this, because I think of us, we want to be conscious bees, right? We want to be bees that recognize that what we're doing is a process that's allowing us to leave this planet. So where we want to go from here is to recognize that if we understand this philosophy in some fashion, and maybe you have your own kind of version on this, and I don't expect that everyone is going to believe, is going to take in or accept everything that I'm presenting here, although I do invite you to read the book and really delve into the material. But if you can accept some version of this, where you recognize that it is imperative that human life expand beyond this planet, however you might define that, there then becomes a sense of responsibility, right? We feel like, where there's power, great power, there's great responsibility. Where there's knowledge, if you're knowledgeable of this, there's a sign of responsibility on our part to then engage actively in helping to make that happen. So, here I like this. I like this quote here. This quote: "A philosophy without action is worthless," and that was from the founder of the Honda Motor Company, Soichiro Honda, which I thought was very appropriate. I think it's useful to have the philosophy because it helps us to understand why we're doing something. It can be a source of motivation, but then we have to get to work, right? So what are we going to do? And so it's been interesting in interacting with Adriano and other people within the industry, recognizing where I came from when I worked on Capitol Hill. In 1988, I helped to pass the Space Settlement Act. It was the first and only time that legislation was, that space settlement was mentioned in public law. And that was 35 years ago, almost 35 years ago. Now I'm feeling, what specific thing can we do? And so that resulted in about 3 years ago, we began working on this idea of a think tank that's focused on legislation and policy that can help us get closer and closer to a space migration future. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about, and also in particular, the issues that we're identifying, and hopefully the Space Renaissance Institute can join us, and we look forward to that. I have a video here, and I don't know if it's going to play for you guys. And maybe Adriana, you can unmute and let me know if you can hear it, but I'm going to play it right now. It's playing now. Can you hear it?
Yes, it is playing. It's playing fine. Thank you.
So that's the Beyond Earth Institute. This is what comes out of when you spend time contemplating what that vision of space, or what that passion for space can mean to you. And this is more than anything else than what I might talk about in terms of what the Beyond Earth Institute is doing. I think an important message is for you to consider where you are at in your life, and what your sense of understanding about where humanity is going in space, and what role in particular you could be playing, right? And maybe you're in the role you should be, and that's great, just go for it. Maybe you're not, and think about that. So the Beyond Earth Institute, we formed, like I said, we officially formed 2 years ago. We are a 501c3 organization. Our mission, I think, is very close to the Space Renaissance Institute. We want to establish and sustain a policy and legal framework that enables economically vibrant communities beyond Earth. We see a society poised. It's many of the world's there are many successful entrepreneurs who have embraced the communities beyond Earth. We know Musk and Bezos, but there are actually many others. And I've actually, just in the course of engaging with the Beyond Earth Institute and talking to some of these leaders in the space community, I'm finding more and more of these folks are clearly in it because they have that shared vision of the future. The new generation is coming forward, and they don't see this as science fiction. They see this as a future horizon that is available to them, and they want to take part in it. Certainly, the space transportation is transformed with SpaceX and Blue Origin. Within 10 years, I estimate that there will be, well, certainly within 5 years, there will not be a single launch vehicle on the drawing board that will not be reusable in some fashion. Certainly technology is advancing rapidly. So particularly in the electronic side, but also the propulsion side, the manufacturing side, are enabling us to see more clearly the potential, not only for engaging in greater and greater commercial space activity, but also the prospects for a human colonization ultimately. This is an assortment of policy areas that we focus on. I'm going to talk more specifically about specific areas that we're working on, but this is a general list, which is we're interested in how do we declare that communities beyond Earth should be a goal, a national or international goal. You heard that on the video. We want to enable science and technology development that relates specifically to space settlement. We are interested in the financing mechanisms of investing in large-scale space infrastructure. We've actually been putting a lot of effort into this area. And we want to look at we're very interested in the rules of law and norms of behavior on the space frontier. And some of these it's interesting how, this set was written a few years ago, and policy is already catching up to some of these things. We're going to have to actually do a new set where we go out further, because that's really where Beyond Earth wants to exist. We don't want to exist in a space where space policy is being is well defined and is being addressed. So we don't really spend a lot of time on things like space junk or space debris mitigation, those kinds of things, as important and essential as they are. We're looking a little bit ahead, that we're making that presumption we're going to be able to overcome that. So just moving on here. So we do research, analyze, recommend, engage, and educate and influence. These are a variety of activities that we're engaged in. We have been holding virtual meetings, webinars for the last 2 years. We've been producing papers on a variety of topics. And then just on the October 13th, just a mere 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, we had our inaugural in-person Beyond Earth Symposium, which went extremely well, very well attended. We actually went over our capacity in terms of sales, in terms of participation. That's Kathy Leaders there, who's an associate administrator of NASA. We had Bob Yalal, who was another associate administrator of NASA. We had other prominent individuals from the administration and from industry participating, 25 speakers in all. So it was a huge success from all measures, and we just want to keep that going. So with oh, that's weird. Okay. Oh, I see what I did. Excuse me for 1 second. All these slides that I had, it looks like I had all these slides marked as hidden. Oh, goodness gracious. Let me see if I could do this all at once. Just give me 1 second. Maybe I could do this all at once. I want to unhide all these slides. So let me come back here. All right, so, oh goodness, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to fill up the time. So of course now it looks like I'm going to go over Adriano. I hope it's okay. But I do want to give you a flavor of really what are the policy issues that we need to be addressed if we are to get closer and closer to a settlement future, right? That's really what it's all about. And that's what we look at all policy through that lens. Is this policy going to help us get closer to creating that future or not? And if it's not, maybe we need to recommend alternate policies. We not only want to remove the barriers, but we want to recommend accelerators into the system. And so it's been a very interesting process over time. So these are some of the topics that I will go into now. It is not a complete list Looking at this now, I don't even see space solar power on here. And we actually did make a specific recommendation to the White House on that. But let me go through these because these are top of mind at the moment. I won't read the list here. As I get into each one, I'll talk a little bit about this. At this point, certainly, I don't know, Adriano, I don't see the list. If there are questions there, I know I haven't stopped to take a breath here, but maybe if there are questions, you can
Yes, I
shout
can.
them out to me.
I can share some questions from the chat. First, some comments. I would like to welcome also Steve, Einar, and Ivan from Space Renaissance. They are all in the chat. Einar is commenting, it's all about people needing to understand that the Earth is our cosmic home and that the size of a home is not important to understanding that we often need to go out. It's also dangerous to go out of your private home if you do not have clothing or other protections to go out. There are also many dangers outside our private home. No one can use such excuses. And he wrote it so.
Yeah.
Then
I wrote, if I could comment on.
Nicholas Nelson is asking, where have your papers been published? And
well, I would, if I can answer that, it's on beyondearth.org, just the way it sounds, beyondearth.org. If you go there, our papers are there. We actually have 4 new papers that came out as a result of our conference less than 2 weeks ago, which will be in the process of being put on the website. But we do have a range of topics on there. Encourage folks to go there. We have a range of webinar recordings as well there. So encourage people to go there.
Okay. Moment. Then Ivan Tiffany is asking space junk. You are assuming that will be taken care of. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, I think, and it needs to be. It's an existential problem, meaning that if we don't solve it, we're probably not going to get where we want to get to in space. So I agree. It's just a matter of what we are choosing to focus on. That's all.
And Nicholas Nelson is writing, those of our new generation who do not see space development as science fiction are the small but vocal few who are Elon Musk fans. And he's recommending or commenting the comment from Ivan too about space junk, but too often that end planetary protection from asteroids takes over the conversation and pushes out these broader topics.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. We're in an environment, a political environment where there are different agendas. And I think some where, we certainly are interested in planetary protection, particularly as it relates to near Earth objects that may impact the Earth and so forth. So those aren't insignificant. So that I don't know if that answered the question, but let me Sabine. Is it Sabine? I hope I'm
Sabina.
Sabina. Okay. Let me go through some of these slides, and then I'll come back. Then maybe we could focus on some of the policy issues here. We have a team, I should say, of about 20 people, probably more like 25. I would say, if you include we have a board of advisors. and we have active professional folks that are volunteering their time and expertise to help us move this agenda along. So it's by no means myself, and in many ways, my depth of understanding of some of these policy items is not as strong as some of my colleagues. However, let me just go through some of these for you. So we're very interested in this evolution of and this is very near term, commercial space stations, right? This picture in the upper right-hand corner actually is a picture of orbital reef being proposed by Blue Origin, right? So there are a lot of questions around commercial space stations because they've never existed before, right? Everyone knows we have the ISS, but that is a wholly government and facility run by and for the government. So there's certain you know, so when you think of a private facility, it raises all sorts of additional questions that have to be addressed. Certainly the environmental challenges, and actually this speaks to the this speaks directly to the space debris issue. There are regulatory challenges. They're not even sure, the companies involved are not even sure who they will need to go to within the US, never mind internationally, where they will need to get approval for launch. And then you have issues of ITAR. These are going to be international facilities, right? So if Orbital Reef is going to want to be able to sell access to their facilities, not just to people in the United States, but entities all over the world, government and private entities all over the world. So how do you get around these international regulatory issues? There is a need for a one-stop shop for licensing approval. Right now, they are looking at a whole long list of they call alphabet soup of agencies: the DoD, NASA, NOAA, other entities. The FCC will have to be engaged in approving launch and operation of these facilities. In trying to, I mean, one proposal is to can we move all of this perhaps into Department of Commerce, for example. The need for commercial, there's a need for a commercial version of the ISS IGA, this international intergovernmental agreement that governs the operation of the space station right now, the ISS. We won't have the value of that. So what does that mean for the commercial folks? We need clarification on a national registry. So we're, you know, according to international space law, items going into space have to be registered in the country from which they come, and the space habitats, the commercial space habitats, potentially will have components from multi-nations. They might get launched from one country but built in another country, have tenants from a wide variety of countries. So there's a huge lack of clarity around that. And then, of course, we want to look at models from other sectors that might have had this kind of a challenge. This is how you start to begin to understand this. So, like, there's the Space Data Association, for example, was created with several commercial entities to help to resolve issues around space data. Something similar could be created around this. So these are the kinds of issues that we're engaging. It's a little wonky, and apologize for that, but I do want you to get a sense of the kinds of issues that we're engaging in. And it's very important that going into space is safe, reliable, affordable. You know, we're not going, you know, there's not going to be anything like space migration if people have to live with the specter of dying young because of radiation exposure, low gravity related health issues, and so forth, or even just having to live in Spartan, Spartan living environment. So, very much a part of what we're looking into is how do we ensure that when humans go into space, it's safe, it's reliable, it's comfortable. There is, it's livable and survivable and thrivable. We want humans ultimately need to go into space and feel like they are. It is just another place to be. Maybe the gravity is a little lighter on the moon, but it's really largely just another place for us to be as humans. And so, what is that going to take? Is NASA, for example, investing enough money in the technologies and scientific understanding of the human factors in space? We would say that probably should be boosted. What are issues? They haven't even invested in the idea of creating artificial gravity. We don't know what it'll take to spin humans in orbit and to create artificial gravity. So there's a lot of things. The opportunity. We are promoting the idea of creating large-scale terrestrial analogs so that we can understand what life on a large facility will be like. There's a need as we go into space more and more, especially in the commercial sector. There's a need for shared data. So because we can understand certain things up to a certain point, but we're not really going to understand the effects of space until we have a larger and larger data set, right? So, millions of hours of humans living and working in space, collecting biological data from the individuals and so forth to help us make additional decisions so that we can move forward. And we need to integrate this kind of data collection system up front. So there's another recommendation we have. And on a simple thing, we have the moratorium on regulations relating to human spaceflight, which were suspended a number of years ago, are due to expire next year in 2023. So we want to certainly extend that. So again, I apologize, a little wonky. I will pause if there's any questions right now coming in any of the things I've said.
I will take the questions from the chat. The chat is online on YouTube. Nicholas Nelson is saying, sure, planetary protection should encompass protecting our orbiter and cislunar assets and travel, both from our own litter and from outside NEOs that could threaten us. Let's lump them together and not make them compete against one another. And in Larsen, a sports and football field are generally cleaner than a space, but that's because most people care about such arenas as they are often even given a holy respect. And then from Inna, if we go out of our house, we can get a head stroke, freeze to death, get sunburned, be eaten by mosquitoes, and be cuffed in a storm. We must always prepare ourselves for the dangers that exist. And yeah, Ivan says we need to consider sex in space.
What? Always a consideration, yeah. I won't touch that last one, but I wrote a blog on a few years ago on the subject of, we already are, in a sense, we're already living in a space colonies. We live in the built environment, right? we call it in construction parlance, or in terms of the construction industry, we already live on space colonies because our environment is so controlled, right? So the point about going outside, being eaten by mosquitoes, the extreme heat, extreme cold, we are supremely protecting ourselves from our outside environment. The Earth, if we didn't have the built environment, if we were left, most of us, the vast majority of us, if we were dropped in the middle of, even if we were dropped in the middle of the forest or the you know, we probably would not survive, especially if we were dropped there naked, despite, you know, TV shows and so forth. We would not survive for very long. So the idea is that we are already conditioned to live in a climate controlled environment. I actually looked it up. We spend less than, we spend about 1.4 hours a day on average in the United States outside. 1.4 out of 24 hours we spent on average outside. That accounts for people whose job it is to work outside all the time. And so for most of us, we're in our house, we get in our car, climate controlled car, we go to our climate controlled work, get back into our climate controlled car to our climate controlled house, and we spend very, very little time. Maybe we go for a walk, you know, once a week, my family and I and our dog, we go for a hike in the woods, you know, for a couple of hours, you know, that's once a week, you know, that's not very long. So the thing is, we are, you know, as long as a space colony has a place where people can feel this, you know, have fresh air to breathe, and perhaps can have a wooded area to spend time in, you know, that may be sufficient, you know, for us. So that's a very appropriate conversation to have, and I can share the link, of course, for that for that blog. But at any rate, so let me continue here. And again, these are.
May I add a few considerations at this point? Hello?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
May I add a few considerations at this point? Because
yes, please do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As I expected, your presentation was quite interesting and informative, and I'm very, very happy to see that your institute is following let me say, an elaboration program that's very similar to the one we are following at Space Renaissance International with our committees. By the way, yes, you participated to our Congress in 2021, and at the end of that Congress, we had a final resolution that includes several of your points. So definitely, and also the focus to focus on the human needs, and to think about space settlement from a humanist point of view. I think we are very, very in tune. And so yes, definitely your proposal to make maybe a partnership agreement is a very good proposal, and I will send you a standard just maybe tomorrow. And but I wanted to comment the issue of the space debris. But we are also focusing on space debris, by the way. So, but we think that the orbital debris and near-Earth objects should be approached in a similar way from the political and strategical point of view, because we consider both are threats to the planet, and not only to the planet, to also to the spacecrafts and habitats and so on, but they are also resources. They are also in situ resources. So space debris are orbital resources. So when one of the priorities, but definitely, is to develop the technologies to be able to collect debris and reprocess them and reuse them. But in order to do that, we need one more step in the downsizing of cost of launch systems. So, of course, 100% reusable launch system is the first step on this, the first key milestone on this road. And the second one will be to produce fueling space. So I think that if we are working to a strategy for space settlement, we have to think about these two key milestones as the first key milestones. First, fully reusability. Second, to produce fueling space. Because when we will be able to produce fueling space, all the space missions, wherever they are going to, will cost maybe 1/3 of what they
notes here. Okay.
Okay, so okay, we are developing these concepts with our committees, and for sure the concrete proposal will be to work together on these concepts, because I see that we are not only philosophically in tune but also politically in tune, and this is very good. And let me say that I am very grateful to you for the obligation. This is my last comment that I let you go ahead, because in the obligation you classified those 7 or 8 different kinds of human attitudes: the explorer, the settler, the designer, the protector, and so on. And I started from there, thinking about Howard Gardner, other classification of the intelligences, the different intelligence kinds, linguistic, mathematical, space awareness, and so on. Even Howard Gardner identifies maybe 8 different kinds of intelligences. And I made a matrix in order to demonstrate how much 8 billion people are, all of them are different. Each individual is a different individual, because everybody now owns maybe 2 or 3 of these attitudes in different proportions. Therefore, think about really the billion of possible different attitudes that exist in the world. And that is the richness, the great richness of our patrimony, our human patrimony, that we need to keep this patrimony and to help to expand, because in a closed world it's not possible to expand. So therefore, yeah, we have the philosophy, we have a policy. Now it is time to try to and I also, okay, then I really stop. I'm also talking with the MVA, the Moon Village Association. I was able to attend 1 hour to one of their webinars today in the afternoon, and they were talking about habitats and psychological conditions and thinking about habitats from the humanist point of view and so on. So I think there are many groups that are thinking to this problem, and it is time to start to work together and make this thing to enhance, to be promoted, spreaded, and to convince the politicians and so on. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for. I always your appreciation of my of the obligation is always very much appreciated, and you know, it does take all types, right? So everybody, you know, and I think we did this exercise when I was there in Montecrivello. I said, you know, what type do you think you are? You know, are you the builder? You're the inventor, you're the protector, you know? So everyone's sort of, if you think about it, you could say, what type of person do you identify with? And it's a good exercise, but it takes all different types. And I think, yeah, this matrix that you created sounds like adds another dimension. And then, you know, obviously you're talking about just a wide range of individuals that go into the human soup to make it all possible, right? So that's great. On the Beyond Earth thing, we specifically say that we're not an advocacy group, right? So what we want to do is do some of the knotty work, some of the hard work on the policy side, and then provide recommendations that advocates can run with, right? So, in one way or another. So we don't, as much as we advocate when appropriate, we're not looking to encourage the public to be excited about these things. Our attention is completely on individuals that are involved in space policy or setting space policy.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in the U.S., so our focus is on the U.S. But actually, we did have Jan Werner. I don't know if you knew this. We did have Jan Werner, who participated in our program 2 weeks ago. He came in via Zoom, but he was, he was charming and funny as always. So it was great to have him there. So we are trying to have more and more of an international aspect to this as well. And there are overlaps. So we'll, in terms of the topics that we're addressing and so forth. And I agree with you on the need to have, and I know Rick Tomlinson, I just was talking to him about the same thing, about salvaging, right? That's really the term where rather than, we're going to clean up the space junk, but it's really a salvage opportunity. Can we create business models around collecting the junk and then repurposing the space junk one way or another? So that's very, and maybe there's policy around enabling that, right? So you could the government, U.S., other governments can incentivize companies to invest in that way. So, and that's not a proposal we have right now, but that's the kind of thing that we definitely could conceivably look at. So, in the interest of, I know I'm way over, just in the interest of getting through, I just had a few more slides. And property rights in space, I'm sure you guys are very attuned to that ongoing debate. We don't presume to have resolved that at all. We do feel that, let me see here 1 second. Need to get something out of the way. Why? Sorry about that. Oops. What happened here? So property rights. Okay. So international law really isn't sufficient to help us to understand property rights as they need to be understood. I think the general consensus internationally is that the resources of space actually, can be utilized. It's just how do we do that in a way that's equitable and so forth. We prefer that the U.S. We embrace U.S. law on utilization. The U.S. passed a law recently on utilization of resources, that we have the ability to extract materials from planetary bodies, even though we don't claim ownership of those locations, that real estate. There's an opportunity for bilateral and multilateral agreements. So if enough countries get together and basically set the ground rules, that's a way of kind of getting around United Nations action, which could be very cumbersome to do. Most people are very concerned that you'd ever be able to get an updated space law approved through the United Nations. So another way of doing that is through multilateral agreements, like the Artemis Accord is kind of a first stab at that. There's other potential opportunities there. I don't, we'll be talking about something called the Washington Compact. I don't know if that's hit your radar yet, but that's something we're involved with as well. That's more of an agreement between companies and entities, corporations and entities that have come to a similar set of agreements related, similar to the Artemis Accords, but more commercially oriented. We need to establish a general agreed framework so that entrepreneurs and investors feel confident. That's really what it comes down to, and so it's an ongoing thing that we'll continue to work on. We want to develop opportunities in cislunar ecosystem and in the cislunar ecosystem, particularly as it relates or could evolve to human presence. This is where the opportunities to mine the moon for water exists, and so what role can government play in helping to facilitate that kind of thing? So here, the last bullet here is an idea of the strategic propellant reserve. You guys might be familiar with. It's proposed by ULA, the United Launch Alliance, has been really promoting this. Tori Bruno actually gave a talk at our conference on this subject, whereby the government, the U.S. government, could be a collection of governments, I suppose, would say that we will purchase, we will commit to purchasing a volume, so many metric tons of propellant, if you can deliver that propellant to lunar and or Earth orbit, and that propellant would be available for in-orbit assets that may need emergency access to propellant. So and so that the presumption there is that, okay, now we have a guaranteed customer, and that creates a future income for anyone who can put together the financing to get to the South Pole of the moon, extract the water, and transport it, and in such a way so that it can be delivered to this propellant depot in orbit. So that's a design about how government can be directly involved in the cislunar economy. This also relates to an ongoing discussion on financing models, right? So we understand that it's one thing to finance a constellation of satellites, right? Or even a launch vehicle, even a new launch vehicle. It's maybe upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe into the billions of dollars. But when you're talking about large-scale human habitats, or even large-scale infrastructure elements, you're talking about orders of magnitude larger investment needs. You need to manage the risk of that kind of an investment, and so it creates a need for a greater creativity in how do we do the project financing for these things. And this is the kind of thing that we have been looking closely at. You can look at traditional instruments like loans and subsidies and tax incentives and so forth. They can go a certain way, and then there's more creative ways, such as a space commodities exchange, or a lunar development cooperative. I think in the answer to the time, I won't really get into those unless somebody asks me specifically to explain that. And then I think I do want to spend a minute on a specific proposal. Now, this is a proposal that we, in a report that we are issuing, and maybe after I close the slides, I'll put this on the, can I share this right now? Let me see here. I'm going to share, we have a paper that's relating to this topic, and in essence, we want to create a Beyond Earth working group within the U.S. government, essentially what it's recognizing that that space migration is an important future outcome, a direction for the United States, and as such, we need to be moving more aggressively in that direction. And through this working group, we can develop and initiate specific actions that will help to get us closer and closer to that. And it will, and the responsibilities of this working group will encompass these items here that I've listed, which is, you know, looking into international norms and cooperations and agreements, defense and national security, the domestic laws and regulations, streamlining space-related licensing, administrative processes, investment rules, tax incentives, competition, flexibility, and insurance, government procurement, carve-outs, dispute resolution forums, and then one in particular we're looking to do is to is a new trade agreement negotiated under the fast-tracked authority with our international space partners. We're actually calling it the space trade agreement, and this is this would actually be pulled out as a recommendation. So it's all about you know, what are the rules of the road for economic expansion into new territories beyond Earth. So this we're kind of excited about, and I think that was my last one. And if I could quickly, let me see, did I stop sharing? I think I did. If yes, I can quick,
yes, if I could stop sharing.
Okay, I think that was it. I want to, if I could quickly grab the URL. I'm going to put it into the field here, into the chat field, and you're welcome to download that. Where's the chat field? Here it is.
Maybe Adriano, you can put it in the chat
yeah.
from.
Yes. Just a moment.
So I just did that now, and that's to be released. We're actually putting together a press release, so that's a little bit ahead of the curve. But this, you know, one thing that's going on is we are finding, as I said, we're finding people in industry that agree with our vision, which is really exciting. We're also finding people within the administration that are wholly in agreement too, and would like to find a way to put space settlement as part of a more visible part of a of national and certainly international policy. They need a way to do that. You know, we're helping them with that. They get some reaction, which is very interesting reaction, which is everything that NASA does, certainly the entire human space program at NASA is helping to move us in the direction of space settlement. So therefore, why do we need to articulate it, right? Because we're already going there, you know, and we're certainly willing to admit, to agree that that NASA is engaged in all these things that need to get us there. And certain things could be tweaked. We certainly agree with that. But so, you know, they don't quite. But some folks, you know, but some folks get that we can by stating that goal and embracing it on a national level and international level. What it does is it creates clarity, you know, around everything that you're doing. You know, people might object to it, but let's talk about that objection, you know, and it creates clarity that we know where we're going, we know what we're doing. We're not just going to Mars just to go to Mars to put flags and footprints there. We're going there to stay. Why? Because this is part of our long-term vision, is to ultimately create new civilizations beyond Earth. It's not science fiction. It's not it's for real. Is it, is it hard? Do we have all the pieces? Do we have all the understanding that we need to have, all the technology in place? Absolutely not. But it is within, it's certainly much more within sight today than when you and I, Adriano, were much younger men, and we started, first started getting passionate about this. And it's definitely a new time today, and every year is unfolding new and new capabilities and possibilities for this. And so I think we'll actually see an acceleration towards this future, rather than another slowdown, I guess, as we saw after Apollo. So anyway, with that, I will conclude.
I would forward, thank you for this interesting lecture, and I would like to forward some more questions from Nicholas Nelson. He's saying the Moon Village Association has very similar aims and values as BE, and is there any cooperation with them?
Yeah, we had the Moon Village. We're close, actually. I believe that John Menkins is the president of that organization. He's actually one of our advisors.
One of the board directors. The president is Giuseppe Reibaldi.
Oh, okay. So,
however,
so John Menkins is very active there, I know, and he's an advisor. Moon Village. I don't know who else. I did get that invitation. They're very close now with NSS. They're having an event in a couple of weeks, if I recall correctly. So yeah, we're willing to work with them. I just have a sense, we're looking, we're engaging people who have strong policy credentials that are working with us. We're willing to, we work with NSS, we work with the Moon Village, we work at the Space Frontier Foundation, and we want those relationships, and including, of course, the Space Renaissance Institute. So
shouldn't we try to agree on a shared platform of few points, a few concepts that we can try to promote together to have a bigger influence, on
I think that would be,
in Asia, maybe in Japan, in other countries where we are, and we can maybe make the difference if we try to.
I think we're getting close to that. I do know there's, I don't know if you're familiar with ASD. Are you guys belong to ASD, the Alliance for Space Development?
Yes, our USA chapter is a member of ASD.
Yeah. So I know they have again, if they have that kind of mission, let's agree on a set of principles. So I think that would be good. And part of it is, we are still getting our legs under us, right? We're 2 years in the works, I splashed on. I showed you a lot of things that we're looking into. Some are more developed than others, and I probably should have taken the extra step just to say, okay, this is our core set of things that we're most interested in. But I think that's the way we're going, Adriano. I think we have to ultimately decide on a few things that we can all agree on, and then we can all push on collectively in a coordinated way. I mean, if we do something like that, that's where I'd say, we need to pool some money, pool resources, bring in a top flight communications company that can help us to really take what we want to say and then help to craft that, because it's into a broad campaign. I think that's, I think, anyway, we're very open to working with you on all of that.
Okay,
That's
we
great.
can put it on the table to NSS, to MVA, to Behind the Earth, and to the Mars Society too, because we have.
Well, it's the Mars Society, but it's also, there's what is it? There's another Mars group, the Explore Mars, right? Explore Mars as well. Yeah, I think, yeah, we're very open to that. We're very open to that. So let's do that.
Something that we a few years ago we made an initiative that was called the Civilian Space Protocol. And unfortunately, we were not strong enough to really make it be influenced. Right. I want to just a few seconds to share.
I would lean towards.
So this, this is the website. It's still alive.
Yeah, yeah.
A call to the worldwide space community, and it is basically the same. Not quite the same. This was in 2018, I think. But the preamble is the same concept that we discussed.
Right.
And the points are low-cost space transportation systems, low acceleration spacecraft, safe and comfortable atmospheric re-entry, protection from cosmic radiation, lunar habitats, orbital habitat, and artificial gravity, artificial green ecosystem in closed environments. So these points were the seed of our Congress in 2021, and the final resolution elaborates better this and other concepts. So I believe if we will not be too much, let me say, in love with the wording, because each one of us has some particular wordings, no? So I think we have to focus on the concepts and to put it in the more neutral possible way, in order that many people can recognize themselves in that.
Yeah, if I might, I mean, I do remember when I was going back and forth. I know I read through it. I'm not sure if I gave you my notes on that, but our inclination would be to identify a much more narrowly defined policy issue, rather than that is very sweeping what you're recommending there. And can we leverage something, especially if it might have to do with helping to spur commercial development of space in the way that we want it to go, and that and it might be in the area, more narrowly defined on property rights, something that is high leverage but small, small to achieve, but create high leverage, in terms of opening possibilities for greater space activity. But anyway, let's, I don't want to, let's not say anything. Let's not make any decisions here. Yes. Let's just have let's have a follow-up conversation. And I think it's time that NSS, ASD, they're very eager to, have conversations, and we're eager to support. We obviously are our whole purpose is to support the entire space advocacy community, so this is part of what we're doing. So thank you for bringing that up.
May I enter another question from the chat? Also from Nicholas Nelson, and all are recommending, thank you very much for your time and for the interesting talk. And Nicholas Nelson is saying entrepreneur and investor confidence, yes, but also insurance underwriters. The legal and best practice framework will really help. And then he is asking, so one does not own what they occupy in space. One owns what one brings, builds, or harvests from what is found in space, right? Is that a good layman's explanation?
Actually, if I got that all right, I think it was pretty good in terms of, right, U.S. law a few years ago passed the Space Resources Act 2015 or 16. And that's just U.S. law, so it's not international law. And all we said was that it is permissible for a U.S. company to access the resources on the moon or other celestial bodies and extract those resources for use on Earth or in space. But it does not imply ownership of that real estate, whether it's on the moon. You don't own that space on the moon, and you don't own that space, that asteroid per se, just because you landed there and extracted the materials from there. So thereby, as such, that language is there. They argue doesn't violate, the Outer Space Treaty, people have argued that it does, or that it could, but that's U.S. law.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you very much for this interesting talk, for this interesting event. Also from the chat, I get this commentations. They are all very happy, and I think we should think about collaboration or common agreement together. I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you for joining us. And I would like to remind you that we are a non-profit organization. So please subscribe, please become member of SRI if you are interested. We are holding our webinars every first and every third Monday at month. Our next speaker will be Adriano Ottino, and he will talk he will talk about the 5th season, the Bingo Space Surprises. So we are curious to learn what he wants to tell us. And of course, Steve, you are invited to join our webinars too. Thank you so much for coming, for being here with us. And I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Ad Astra. Thank you very much, Steve, for your time and your excellent lecture.
Yeah. So let's just have a call. Let's have a call later this week or next week. Okay.
Yes.
And see what we can. I don't know that we're actually ready yet. As you said, I think we should build towards a common thing. I think we should be very deliberate about that. And it should, as you say, it would be very interesting if think about it. If we could find something that that groups around the world, right? So your group, obviously the U.S. groups. I mean, as you mentioned, the China, Japan. I don't know if that's you talk about. Is that a chapter of the Space Renaissance group in Japan, or is that?
We are still live. Can you go finishing the live chat?
Oh, we're still live. Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I have to let you go. I'm sorry. We'll talk. I'll send you an email. We'll set something up.
Okay. Okay. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.